Today we're going to do a little advocacy content. Advocacy content, as you know on my channel, is always brought to you by Bike Legal. They're attorneys specializing in cyclist accidents and injuries. Links below. A quick note from Bike Legal, whether they represent you or not, go to your auto insurance and have them raise your uninsured motorist coverage. Yes, it's auto insurance, but this has you covered if you're riding a bike and you're hit by a vehicle, whether they're uninsured or not insured enough. Most states, the default for that is way too low. The state minimums would be like $10,000. You can have that raised to $300,000, $500,000 for not that much money, and you will be covered that way. So today, I'm going to answer some of the questions that angry motorists have asked me over the years. But first, we're going to start with a little story. So a few weeks ago, I was riding on Ventura Boulevard in Los Angeles. There were multiple lanes. It was a pretty empty traffic time. And there was a guy who insisted on being in the right lane where I was. And then he would pass me, and then I would catch him at a red light, and he would squeeze past me again. And he just gradually got angrier and angrier. And eventually I caught him at a light, and he opened me and was like, "I'm so sick of having to pass you." And I kind of laughed. It's like, you're almost getting it. we're at the same place at the same time. Never passed me at all. And then a couple miles later, I'm not making this up, I saw him in a very, very long line at the Starbucks drive-thru. Now, of course, cyclists aren't perfect, motorists aren't perfect, but I think if you want to know why cyclists are sensitive or defensive or ride defensively or ride in the middle of the road, I'm going to answer those questions. I think a lot of sane motorists would be who, you know, you're mildly inconvenienced by a cyclist. You have to wait behind someone for a few seconds. I understand, like, that's a little bit annoying. That's a little bit of an inconvenience. When I get stuck behind someone at the supermarket who's, like, you know, squinting at a nutrition facts, I'm low-key annoyed for a fraction of a second. I don't scream at them and want to fight them. But when it comes to a cyclist, there's a category of motorists who will become so enraged at this mild inconvenience. You don't mind the Starbucks line. You don't mind being stuck behind a UPS truck. But something about a person wearing tights on the far side of the road will drive you nuts, where you're inconvenienced for a couple seconds, but then somehow you have all day to yell at us, to pull over. I've had people want to fight. So are you in a rush, or do you want to, like, throw down and get the cops called right now? Or leave hostile comments on my Instagram and YouTube for it. To my Starbucks friend, he had an open lane next to me. There's 3 lanes on that part of Ventura Boulevard. There was light traffic that day. He could have just stayed in the middle lane and not been inconvenienced whatsoever. As it was, his only inconvenience was to simply turn the wheel, which, if that's too hard for you, I would say that you shouldn't be allowed to drive a motor vehicle. So I got home and I made an Instagram reel, YouTube short, whatever, TikTok video that was motorist stuck behind a cyclist for 11 seconds after waiting in line at Starbucks for 40 minutes. And it was the Will Ferrell clip of him freaking out in Anchorman. Grab the children! And of course, like, my followers are all cyclists, they get it, so that got a bunch of likes and comments, whatever. And then what happens is YouTube, Instagram, all these websites are super evil. And once they've served it to folks who will like the video, all they care about is engagement. They want people to see it. They don't care how mad they are. They don't care if you want to see it or not. They want you to just go through it. So they then send it to people who will hate watch it. So what happened is, like, I'll get, 4,000 likes in the first 24 hours and then a gap of 2 hours. And then I'll get hate messages from motorists. So everyone who's been stuck behind a cyclist who once made a meme mad at cyclists, left a comment anti-cyclists, will then get served this video, because it's all the same to YouTube and Instagram, and they'll leave these hostile comments and thumbs down. So they say don't read the comments, which is mostly true, but today I'm going to make an exception. There were hundreds of comments. I'm going to read the highlights on these. And I spoke to my friends at Bike Legal, so there's going to be some actual, like, legal answers to a couple of these. I think it'll be useful for cyclists to kind of be armed with that, and also for the sane motorists out there, for the 99% of motorists who pass safely and don't have a problem, and who might feel that inconvenience and wonder, like, why are cyclists so mad, or why do cyclists do this and that. You'll get your answer too. You need to know what else is out there, what we have to face on a day-to-day basis. Okay, now on to the comments. The first one. I hate cyclists because they refuse to ride the safe way. Pretend people are actively trying to kill you and recognize that the roads are made for cars. You're simply allowed to use them. Build a culture of courtesy and caution, and watch the locals slowly start to give more space and speed. The best part of this, of course, is a guy who starts with, "I hate cyclists," and then attempts to make, like, a rational argument. Now, I agree with part of this. I agree with pretend that motorists are trying to kill you. I think that's kind of a good advice for all cyclists out there. When a car passes you, just assume that he forgot you existed, even though he just passed you. Assume he forgot you existed and he's about to make a right turn. Make the space for him to do that, whether he has a turn signal on or not, because once in a while, if you ride, hundreds of miles in the streets, once in a while they will do that, and you give them that space, you prepare for that, and it will save you an injury. Now, that's a best practice for cyclists, but if you're a motorist and you think that the way you should get to go through life is you do whatever you feel like at high speed and people just get out of your way, well, that's sociopathic. And of course, roads were not made for cars. Roads were invented in the Neolithic age, the Stone Age. That's 12,000 years ago. Pavement was actually invented for cyclists to speed up bicycles and horse-drawn carriages. But roads were made, of course, for people. Kids would play in the streets, in the early 1900s. And then when cars first came around, they go slow, they're pretty uncommon, so folks sort of get out of the way. Gradually, of course, they get faster, and what happens is cars take over the roads just based on the default of they have the speed. There's the automotive lobby that suddenly makes jaywalking illegal. For the most part, that was all bought and sold by crooked politicians and just a sense of danger. These days, roads are still made for people. Bicycles are still allowed to be on all the roads. In fact, we're required to be on the roads. Interstates were made for cars. If you see me riding on the interstate, feel free to honk. Next comment. We wouldn't be mad if they followed the rules of the road. They don't follow speed limits, stop at stop signs, stop for pedestrians, or even signal. If you want to ride on the road, the rules apply to you. First of all, I like that he mentioned speed limits. You see a lot of cyclists breaking the speed limits, of course. That's a big problem. Okay, the real answer for why cyclists run stop signs, it takes a lot of energy to come to a complete stop. It's the same with a car, but you don't feel it because it's just a pedal. Actually come to a complete stop and then re-accelerating from speed it's physically difficult. It will wear on you if you obey it. So bicyclists will, I'm going to say we're more likely to sort of get to the stop sign, look both ways, and roll through it and maintain as much physical momentum as we can. That's because it's a physical activity. It's exerting. Also, from a safety perspective, if I'm at a red light with a line of cars and there's no bike lane coming up, when it turns green, what I'm going to have is I'm racing against a motorized vehicle for limited space in the road. So it's often in my best interest, safety-wise, to sneak through that red light when there's no one coming and claim my lane on the road so that I'm not fighting someone who might kill me for it. And of course, the longer a cyclist stays at an intersection, the longer they're going to be impeding traffic. Of course, I'm not advocating for cyclists to break the laws. Bike Legal is certainly not advocating for cyclists to break the laws. I'm just saying, if you see it, that's why it's happening. Motorists typically speed and break the laws because they're in a rush. Cyclists and pedestrians, if they break the laws, it's generally an act of self-preservation. Also, when it comes to stop signs, which is a place where I do see a lot of drama with motorists, part of the problem there is that motorists don't know how to handle a four-way stop. I'll get to a stop, so it's whoever gets to the stop first, that's who has the right of way. I'll get there, and there was already a car waiting there. He sees me coming, and I assume he's going to go, so I kind of slow down, and then he stops and gestures me, which, had he just gone when he was supposed to go, my momentum would have carried me through. No one would have had to come to a stop. I'm going to say this happens with more than 50% of motorists at stop signs. If everyone knew how to do a four-way stop, we would not have this problem. Now, when it comes to the rules of the road, I get it. There are cyclists who are dicks. There are cyclists who break the law. I've seen guys on the wrong side of the road. I've seen guys fly through red lights without looking and force cars to kind of slow down. I've seen cyclists litter. There are people from all walks of life who are jerks. But statistically, cars and cyclists break the laws at the same rate. Let me say this again. Statistics show that cyclists and motorists break the laws at the same rate. So the whole thing of the law-breaking cyclists, absolute myth. So why don't we agree to do each other a favor, and you don't judge all cyclists by the very worst that we have, and I won't assume that all motorists are like the crazy DUI guy who drove through a Dunkin' Donuts window in the middle of the day. I won't think that all of you are that insane either. He also mentions that cyclists don't even signal. I didn't know that cars came with signals anymore. And if you want to talk about breaking laws, I'm going to estimate that 20% of cars that I see are looking down at their phones instead of through the windshield. And 20%, I'm being generous. In Los Angeles, it might be closer to 50. Now, I recognize that's a whataboutism. That's Trump being, hey, you tried to cause an insurrection. That's treason. And him saying, what about Hunter Biden's laptop? But here's why it's not. A few weeks ago, as I record this, a junior cyclist who was 17 years old, going to cyclocross world championships, a very skilled athlete, was hit and killed by a car in Boulder, Colorado. The same day, a guy that I know in Redlands, California, was hit and run an early morning group ride. He died. I did the tour to Big Bear a couple weeks ago. This is a couple thousand riders, signs all over the road, police, like medium road closures, and a kid was hit during the event. The driver did not slow down to see if he could perhaps save this person's life. He just sped off to protect his own ass. This is a guy leaving a child at the scene. And that's just in the last few weeks. I could go on and on and on. Now, every year in the U.S., 6,000 pedestrian deaths, 850 bicyclist deaths, another 76,000 pedestrians and 47,000 bicyclists are injured by motorists annually. By the way, if you are a motorist and you run into a cyclist, go ahead and stop and aid them. Go ahead and stop and call 911. Don't worry that they're going to arrest you or you're going to get in trouble for it, because statistically, motorists are almost never in trouble for this sort of thing. The police will call it an accident, and conveniently the other side of the story is dead. So you might as well try and call the cops, save the person that you just hit. So that's why it's not the same thing when a cyclist breaks the law versus when a motorist breaks the law. The stakes are just a lot higher when you have a heavy vehicle. You might be able to find a cyclist who killed a pedestrian or who killed a motor vehicle, but it's just not even close to how many deaths happen the other way. I'm going to guess that for every minute a motorist has had to wait behind a cyclist, there's 10 cyclists whose literal lives have been put in danger for someone to save 10 seconds. Another thing I think that most sane motorists will be shocked at is I can be on the far side of the road in a wide shoulder, not impeding anybody's traffic, not in anybody's way, and I will still get honked at, flipped off, yelled at. There's just a level of hate that you have to absorb for some reason as a cyclist that's just out there. Okay, next comment. My commute to work involves 9 miles on a winding 2-lane road through a national park with few safe passing areas. All of us rural folk get pretty pissed off when we're stuck behind some rolling billboard elitist share the road but not the cost of road maintenance lycra-clad quadzilla who apparently doesn't have to work on a Monday morning like everyone else. Ruck roadies. So a lot of thoughts on this one. One of them, the Ruck Roadies, that means he's a mountain biker. This guy's actually, his name was Tubby. So in the comments, there's people who are kind of attacking him and making fun of him, and somebody called him Tubby. So he responded, why don't you come meet me at the gym and I'll show you how fat I am. So this is a guy who's like actually trying to get in a physical altercation from my Instagram comments. This is just a person with an anger problem. And cyclists are just vulnerable to those. And also, what a lucky person you are. 9 miles through a national park is your commute. How beautiful, how fortunate are you? By the way, I think all national parks, I'm pretty sure like the speed limit's 25 anyway, so I don't see how much you're actually being delayed there. But also like, what glory for you to just behold this, by the way, this national park, which is meant for everyone to enjoy. If that's your commute and you're mad at being stuck in a national park, maybe you should just move like out into the forest where you won't have to encounter other human beings and bother anybody at all. Maybe you should just like be a total recluse. People fly from all over the world to enjoy the view that you're enjoying. How can you be so mad? Now, roads are paid for by income taxes, property taxes, sales taxes, and a small percentage of that budget, depending on what state, where you are, is paid for by car registration fees and gasoline taxes. So if you talk about a pompous old guy who's not going to work, I'm guessing like that guy retired, made a bunch of money, pays plenty in property taxes, which is going, I'm guessing he pays more than your share of the road maintenance fees. It's also worth pointing out that most cyclists drive cars and do pay those other fees. And of course, when it comes to road damage, bicycles do almost nothing compared to cars. So here's a chart comparing a big rig to a Hummer, to a Chevy Tahoe, and then to, let's say, that's 18,000-pound vehicles versus, a very heavy cyclist on a very heavy bicycle is 350 pounds. He does almost no damage to the road compared to these vehicles. And even like you see the Prius on there, people don't talk enough about the new electric cars, which of course better for the environment overall, but they are significantly heavier. The batteries on those cars are super heavy, and they actually do a lot more damage to the roads than a car that looks similar size is actually a fraction of the weight. So I'm going to pay for my share of the road damage. Let me just dig in my pocket here and pull out no, actually I thought I had a dime in there. I didn't, so here's a middle finger. Now I'm glad he likes my Quadzilla. I'll get to the Lycra part of this comment later. I do want to address the pompous, rich, asshole, elitist reputation. Cyclists, that is kind of on us, not us exactly, but on the bike industry. I think for a very long time focused on like exclusivity and high-end carbon fiber and this like kind of overpriced fashion thing. I've always hated that. I think the marketing of cycling towards the rich white guy ultimately just made us look bad. In the last few years, like the cycling industry sort of noticed like, oh crap, like all the dentists already have bikes. How do we get black people to ride bikes, for example? But the elitist thing, like as an industry, that's sort of on us to overcome. Okay, next comment, there's a popular one, go ride on a trail. No, not me, but I think it's important for motorists to keep in mind that, like, not everyone you see riding a bicycle is doing it for exercise or recreation. Some people are riding a bike for transportation. In fact, that's the most important use of a bicycle as I see it. That's the one that saves the world. We talk about cyclists coming off as elitist. What's actually elitist is assuming that everyone can afford a $10,000 car. Okay, next comment. Don't ride 2 to 3 abreast on a two-way road or in giant packs taking up the entire lane. Maybe people won't complain. Try riding single file and wearing earpieces to talk to each other. Yes, I'm impatient, but when I'm 5 minutes away from my destination and now I'm actually 15 to 20 minutes away because there are cars and I can't pass. I hear versions of that a lot, and it just sounds like you've just made up a situation to justify your rational behavior. No one's ever been stuck behind a cyclist for 15 minutes. You know how long 15 minutes is? Also, if you're talking about a pack of cyclists, that's many people in the way of one person. Isn't this an equal... What kind of royalty are you that all these people should part so that you, one person, can have your convenience? This guy went on and on in further comments, complaining how much time cyclists have cost him. I'm convinced that there are a lot of people who have spent more time complaining about cyclists on Facebook, on the internet, to their friends, than they actually have been stuck behind cyclists collectively over the entire course of their life. Why do cyclists ride in the middle and take up the whole road? This is a fair question. This is a question that a sane motorist would ask, and I'm going to give you a sane, fair answer. There's a few answers. One, if you're all the way to the right, when a car is pulling out of their driveway, they're looking in the lane in front. They're not necessarily looking in the shoulder. There's a lot of shadows in the shoulder. A lot of times they won't see you unless you're closer to the middle of the road. Also, when you're at the right side of the road, cars might try to sneak past you when they don't have room. So a lot of times, like, I'll move into the middle of the road when I know there's no room for this car to pass to prevent him from trying to pass. And then when it's safe, I'll move over to give him permission, give him space. You'd be shocked at the shit drivers out there who try to pass when it's not safe. The other day, I'm on a straight part of the road. There's a little twist and it straightens out again. And a car tried to pass me in the bend. Understand, there's a line of cars in both directions, and he tries to pass me in the only spot where it's not safe to pass, where there's no visibility and there's no shoulder. So he risks my life to move up one spot, like as an F1 driver going from P8 to P7, except now we're still in the exact same place and we're about to come to a red light. So you just risked all these lives and accomplished literally nothing. He also asked why bikes have to take up the whole road. 85% of cars have just one occupant. So cars are 2 people wide, but usually just one person. Who's taking up the whole road? Do you ever think about like DoorDash and Uber Eats? Like, since those delivery services started where someone's too lazy to make a sandwich, so they have a sandwich delivered to them, how many times have you been stuck behind a car where it's one guy driving and then the passenger seat is a sandwich? And you're not mad about that. A whole spot on the road that you can't get past just for a dude's lunch. Next comment. On regular roads, maybe you're right. Mountain roads with tons of curves and you can only go 5 miles an hour, there's never a safe time to pass. Thanks for recreating on a public road. Well, it's funny because public's right in there, so that's your problem. So you'll get this, don't ride on a country road, they're too twisty and narrow. And then the same guy later will say, don't ride on Ventura Boulevard, there's too many cars. I ride twisty mountain roads in Malibu an average of 20 hours a week the last 10 years. I have never held up a car for more than 20 seconds if they have half a clue how to drive. So often, I'm entirely in the shoulder and there's a car trying to pass and honking at me and getting super close. You have all the room in the world. All you've got to do is stay between the paint, which presumably you know how to do, and they freak out and they're honking and screaming and losing their minds. And also, where I live, folks on those roads are all recreating. You're driving to go surfing. You're driving for a hike. Why is your recreation more important than anyone else's? Take the 101 next time if you're trying to get somewhere. You take the scenic route and you're decided, I'm going slower because I'm going to enjoy the scene. So enjoy the scene of my butt for a couple seconds until you can see around to pass me. All right, next one really fumes me. As a cyclist, too many of us think that the laws don't apply to us. Drivers wouldn't have problems if we just followed the rules of the road. So this is a classic self-righteous cyclist blaming other cyclists for this anger. I've been harassed literally thousands of times while obeying every law and not inconveniencing anyone. Yes, there are cyclists who make every cyclist look bad, the same way there's motorists who make motorists look bad, but the problem does not start with the cyclist. Okay, here's another one. In my 7 years of riding mountain bikes, I've only come to hate roadies more and more. It's by far the least safe and least exciting way to enjoy bicycles. I know what the law says. Doesn't mean the law isn't dumb. Get off the damn road. This guy seems nice. It's just a bummer when people who are cyclists can't even agree on something like this. But there's angry, miserable jerks in the world, and this guy's one of them. Also, you've been riding for 7 years on the mountain bike? You must be a pro by now, huh? That's pretty good. Next comment. Bikes never belong on roads. Do you want car hit bike or bike hit person? Look, if you think those are the only 2 options, please, please, please turn in your keys right now. What this guy's saying is, if you're on the road, I'm going to hit you, so you should go out on the sidewalk where you hit elderly people, babies, or by the way, it's illegal to ride on the sidewalk. Everyone tells cyclists to ride on the sidewalk. That is against the law. Cyclists will get a ticket for that. Now, Bike Legal would want me to clarify this. When I say it's illegal to ride on the sidewalks, what I'm talking about is most places when it comes to folks like me training higher speeds, 20 plus miles an hour. Obviously, it's not illegal for children to be riding on sidewalks, moms with the kid in the back. Please do not go carrying them and try to push them into the street with all the crazy truck drivers. There are a lot of places and situations where it's legal and obviously appropriate for a bicycle to be on the sidewalk. Next comment. Cyclists pretending that they're not the most insufferable group, using the roadways casually, just acting like it's normal to shave your legs and wear spandex in public. People who are still mad about shaved legs and spandex for dudes, just admit it. You just want to kiss me. I know. Just get it over with. There's a weird, latent homophobia from people who are just mad at seeing a guy in tights. Get over it. Whatever activity you do, you play baseball, you wear a baseball uniform, you go to the gym, you're not wearing jeans or a suit, you ride a bike, you're wearing the appropriate attire for bicycle riding. If it makes you uncomfortable, that's your own, sexual insecurity, weirdness. Deal with that, between you and your therapist. Next one. I usually don't mind cyclists, but my city has put in so many cycle lanes and y'all just don't use them. Please inform me why y'all have to be in a car lane when you have your very own lane. I don't know of any cyclists who opt to use the road when there's an actual decent bike lane next to them. The reason that I would pass up on that, the reason that I'll be in the road instead of the shoulder, is a lot of times there's debris in these bike lanes. There's tons of parked cars. UPS drivers use them. There's this myth that they tell the police, oh, the guy just swerved right in the middle of the lane. The only time that actually happens is because you get in the middle of the bike lane and there's a giant bit of glass that's going to cut your thing up, or there's a car pulling out of their driveway and you're forced to swerve out of it. So sometimes if the bike lane isn't going to survive, isn't appropriate, isn't sufficient, they will have to take the lane. No one chooses that. No one wants to be in your way. In the U.S. especially, bike lanes, they're never protected, so they're often just used as right turn lanes for cars. So yeah, I'll be in the street then. What you'll see everywhere. There's too many cyclists not wearing helmets. Now yes, I always wear a helmet. I'm a big proponent of helmets, but the magical helmet does not prevent you from being crushed under a truck. It just doesn't do as much quite as you think it does. You're not asking to be murdered if you choose to not wear a helmet one day. Okay, last one. My favorite thing is tax dollars being spent on bike lanes that a whopping 0.00 whatever 1% of the population uses. This is a funny one because if you're mad about bike lanes, if you don't want there to be bike lanes, then you can't be mad at the cyclist who's in the car lane. I guarantee this guy is mad at both somehow. Now, of course, I'm all in favor of safe infrastructure and bike lanes. This would solve all the hollering and drama that we're dealing with in these comments. Motorists should be in favor of it too. So this is a good chance to explain the idea of induced demand. Now, statistically, when a lane is added to a highway, the 405 famously in Los Angeles is like the 800 lane wide road, and every time they add a lane, all that happens is more cars come into it, suburbia is stretched out further from the city, the population kind of density decreases and moves out, but traffic is not reduced. In short, induced demand means if you build it, they will come. So if you build bike lanes, if you actually have a complete healthy network, someone's going to see, oh look, instead of being stuck on the 405, I can just take this bike lane to work. I'll be there faster. I'll get some fresh air. I'll be a healthy, happy person. And they'll start doing that. So as the infrastructure is built, more people, the demand is created for it. And statistically, this is from Amsterdam, from New York, Los Angeles, anywhere that you remove a lane for cars and add a lane for bikes, you wouldn't think it would work this way, but it does. It actually reduces time spent in traffic. Counterintuitive, but that maths out. So a lot of times the city will get an initiative okay, we're going to add a bike lane here, and the local shopkeepers, the local commuters will lose their minds, protest, get it canceled. Don't do that. I'm telling you, if you let the bike lanes happen, it will be in your favor long term. Anywhere there's traffic, there should be bike lanes. We're all trying to live in a society here. The rule is the most vulnerable road users should get the right of way. So, a baby happens to be crawling across the road, let them. Horses, bicycles, and cars, cars go last. You're a big metal cage with airbags. You're just the least likely to get hurt. As the first comment said, let's build a culture of courtesy. All right, that's it for this one. Check out Bike Legal. Raise your uninsured motorist coverage. And remember, if you're about to leave an angry comment, if you don't follow me, if you were sent here, if this just showed up in your feed by some algorithm, I'm not saying that you're an angry, miserable jerk. That's the artificial intelligence of the social media algorithms who value engagement. They sent you here because they know that you're an angry, miserable jerk. So again, go see your therapist, seek help. Don't take it out on me. Don't take it on any other cyclists or human beings. All right, see you next time.